Thank you.
Really good.
Why is everyone not seeing that as we see this?
Because they don't have to see it to contribute to it, and because they have become lost in the observation of conditions and feel lack in the absence of conditions that they seek change in. They've sort of lost track of the way that it works, but they're coming back into alignment with it. And no worries, because in the moment that they reemerge back into non-physical, they'll be back in the full swing of it. And when you are reborn into your physical bodies, you are in the full swing of it again. This is the same question as, why are some people willing to be unhappy? That is the question you just asked us. Why are some people willing to be unhappy? And we say, because they have a flawed premise. They believe that the manifestation brings the happiness, and since it hasn't happened yet, they choose to feel unhappy, and then they block themselves from the happiness that they would have along the journey, along the way to the manifestation. So we come along and we say, you can. Volume doesn't help. Esther translates our enthusiasm into volume often. You cannot help. You get to be or have or do anything that you desire. Nothing off limits. And what's so exhilarating to us, we've been describing to you for so long about the way the process works and how the launching of your rockets of desire creates a vibrational reality, and how you want to get into this vortex, we said to you, until you were tired of hearing it. How do I get into the vortex? And then we began explaining to you that this vibrational reality exists, and you can exist with it or apart from it, and the emotions that you feel indicate to you which you're doing. The happier you are, the more in vibrational alignment with your vibrational reality you are, and the more you are going to be a witness to the thoughts turning to things. So it's going to be joyful, 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 explosion into greater joy. But you can also be apart from it, which does not feel good. But these are choices that you have, that we want you to be aware that you have. And so you have to sometimes start in a general place where you realize that you can get general enough that your happiness will return. And once you get general enough, even on subjects that are really bothering you, so that you allow your happiness to return, then you can get back in sync. And then what the unhappiness contrast caused in the vortex can now be realized by you. In other words, you can't live a miserable enough experience, no matter how miserable it is or how much angst you've felt from it. You've contributed to your vortex in a mighty way. But now you've got to figure out a way to get access to that vortex. And so the way we are describing that now is that vortex is in the process of manifesting. But you must be the realizer of the manifestation, because your vortex cannot manifest apart from your conscious realization of it. Does that make sense to you? You created it. You've got to match up to it. Your consciousness, your focus, your realization. That's what turning thoughts to things is. It's realizing. It's turning it to reality. It's focusing it into realness. And so your question about the vortex became loud and clear to us. Abraham, I sort of kind of get this, but how do I get my money out of the vortex and into the bank? How do I turn those vibrations into reality? How do I turn vibrations to thoughts, which are manifestations? And how do those thoughts become things? And so that's what we're really emphasizing with you these days. You got to be willing to just maybe accept on trust or faith enough that happiness is the way you feel when you're in that alignment. And unless you're in that alignment, you're not going to consciously witness the unfolding. And we just don't want you to be so ready to skip over the incremental conscious unfolding, the incremental, the pieces of it, the idea that comes, the new way that gives a little to you. We don't want you to yearn for a manifestation and miss the delicious unfolding. And so we know that if we could get you just for a little while to contemplate what it feels like to be the manifester of the idea rather than of the material object, the manifester of the concept rather than the material object, the manifester of the emotion, the manifester of the state of being, the manifester of the alignment. If you can be the manifester of being in vibrational alignment with your inner being, ooh, happily ever after, happily ever after, happily ever after, with spikes of ecstasy sprinkled all through it. Happily ever after, happily ever after, happily ever after, happily ever after, happily ever after.
Yes.
Enough?
No.
Yeah.
Why are so many people living in fear and afraid to let go, to receive? so much that's being offered to them?
Well, part of it is because they are proceeding from a flawed premise. They don't realize that blessings are being rained down upon them. They have been taught by others who wanted behavior and action from them. Here's the whole story. See if we can find a really good beginning place for you. If you're not getting this and you want to feel good, and you're not thinking about non-physical, and you're not thinking about vibration, and you're not thinking about emotions, you're just observing conditions. And when you see conditions that you approve of or that please you, you feel good. And when you see conditions that don't please you, you feel bad. So you come to a sort of correct but really basically flawed premise that I need to see conditions, and then my response to conditions will either be favorable or unfavorable. So then you set out to try to control conditions / manifestations, which means you got a whole lot of people you got to boss around, starting with those that you live with, starting with those in your neighborhood, because you really believe that your happiness depends on them behaving in a way that when you look at the condition of their behavior, then you feel good. So that's really some of the beginning places of that, because you begin with that flawed premise. And so then as you're trying to control people, then that means that those that you're trying to control, your children, or those littler or smaller or more pliable than you think you are, you say to them, you need to do this in order to make me happy. Or you need to do this in order to make God happy. Or you need to do this, you need to pay these prices, you need to do these things that you may not want to do, but you still need to do them. And so large segments of the population begin doing things that are not their natural inclination. They're not what their true heart desires. They're trying to jump through hoops to make somebody bigger and stronger and more powerful happy. So the whole thing gets all off balance, and everybody loses sight of their own guidance system. But their inner beings didn't. You see, their inner beings watched them in every movement of their life experience and saw what they truly wanted and held it close and dear and became it and kept the light on about it. And law of attraction was responding to who they really are. So as more and more people move through more and more time, there's a bigger and bigger crevasse between who they really are, who their inner being is tending to, and who they are trying to be as they're jumping through hoops to try to please other people, you see. And so then we come along, a lot of teachers do, with all of these platitudes like the joy is in the journey. You try to stand on your head in so many different ways to please people, only to find out that as soon as you please them in that way, there's something else that they are demanding from you. And so what was your question? Why? What was your question? Why? What was your question?
Why are people not letting go? Why are they worrying about what others think?
Because they have trained themselves, and law of attraction helped them to believe that they can only be happy if this condition is the way it is. We want you to understand that trying to control conditions is futile, because conditions are uncontrollable. You don't have control over the conditions that others are creating. And so then what's the worst thing that happens with this scenario that we've just described, which is rampant, by the way? What is the worst scenario that comes from it? More and more people develop more and more desire in their vortex to be free of the bondage of the demands of others. More and more people have stronger and stronger desires about what they want. And then when there are enough who have that powerful desire, then something like this comes about, where we can explain to you what premises that you have picked up along your physical trail that are flawed, that are not serving you. And our favorite thing that we say to you is there's not a shred of evidence to the contrary of what we speak. That makes it really easy to teach this. Because once you get hold of a little piece of this, and your own life shows to you that when you feel like this, you get that, and when you feel like that, you get this, and that you can control the way you feel a little bit, and the better you feel, the better it gets, and the better it gets, the better you feel. After a while, you get the hang of this, and then you come back around to this premise that we so much want you to understand, is that blessings are raining down around you, and they are not nebulous and general. They are precise and specific to you. They are exact answers to exact questions that you are asking. And to the degree that you have cozied up to your inner being, that you have come to care about the way you feel, then you start having these impulses and these awarenesses, and the energy begins flowing through you, and you begin to feel your invincibility, and you begin to know the value of you, and your worthiness returns at last. And then you begin expecting those blessings to flow, not just for you but for everyone. And then together you just dance around. asking and receiving and receiving and receiving and receiving. And sometimes you get so good at receiving that you receive an impulse to be part of the giving that someone else is asking for. Ooh, that's the ultimate state of receiving, isn't it? When you're so in tune that the impulse that comes to you is part of fulfilling someone else's desire, since they are now in the receiving mode, and there you are, you see.
Yes.
Such a nice thing.
Yes.
Enough?
I've got one more. I'm asking all of you, actually this room and actually the world, why does everyone not see the oneness that we are? Because we are all one. We stood together as one soul. Why are...
That's just pretty boring, that's why.
That's a boring? Standing as one?
What we mean by that is, we want you to feel powerfully from us the flawed premise that you've got going on when you say, why does the world not do this? Or why does the world not see that? Because in that moment, you're doing the very thing you're accusing them of doing.
Ah. That's good.
And that's why. And so we'll throw it back to you. Why are you doing that?
Well, I don't look at it that way.
We know, but
right.
we know, but
But you're saying.
so through life, I've come to know that I want this, but I'm observing that the world isn't that way. Why is the world that way? That's why. Because whatever you give your attention to is what you are promoting, you see.
I manifest oneness and kindness and light and love. I don't think...
Oh, we know, but we're after you anyway, because...
I'm a target.
Well, you asked the question that's on the minds of so many. We can break it down into a generic question that fits for every single person. Why am I not getting this thing that I want? Why is this condition different than I would like it to be? And we say, because the creators that are focused upon it have not evolved it to be something else. And so what we would say to anyone who's feeling that way is, you don't have to look at it that way. You could say, there are some who are closed off and not allowing themselves to receive. But don't put a blanket over everyone, because everyone's not doing that, you see. That was a really good conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Really good. Really good. How you doing? All right. So let's get into some right here.